Welcome to the Sherdog Radio Network preview for UFC on ESPN 55, Nicolau versus Perez, also known as UFC Vegas 91. I am your host, Ben Duffy of Sherdog.com. With me, as usual, but unusually, broadcasting from a secure hiding spot somewhere, is Keith Schillen, the executive producer of the Sherdog Radio Network. Keith, tell us about this really, really plain wall behind you, and tell me that Mr. Schillen finally watched one of our shows and kicked you out.
That's it. Finally, she's had enough. She kicked me out. No, I actually am traveling this week for my work. I'm going to a training. I'm actually in Pennsylvania. I'm in a hotel. So I got a private hotel all to myself. So I'm in a town in Pennsylvania called King of Prussia. I've never heard of it before. It's just outside of. Okay, you know, all right. So it's just outside of Philly. It is actually right where Valley Forge is, which is very fitting because this hotel room I came in is absolutely freezing. I'm like, I feel like I'm in like Washington's Continental Army. I'm about to write home a letter saying, you know, the British has blocked our supply lines and the frost is getting to me. And, yeah, and then on top of that, you know, I'm using their Wi-Fi, which is good. I'm using my old computer that I do all like my note taking in. So I kind of have one I do all my note taking and like whatever, like shopping and watching videos. And I kind of have this other computer I only use for podcasting. But I forgot the charger because, you know, I didn't forget the charger. My wife forgot the charger. And I'll tell you why. Because she didn't pack for me. And she packs for me. And she had this like little, like, I don't know, like freaking women's lib moment, some shit where she was like, oh, I'm not going to always pack for you. You're a big boy. You can pack your own shit. Then she still like packed half my stuff for me anyways and told me I didn't have enough underwear and told me, you know, this and that. But she didn't pack everything. It's like, this is what happened. This is what happened when she married me. She grew up in a third world country like Canada. Mm-hmm. She became a citizen in 2019, so she finally started getting freedom, and this is what happens when you give women freedom.
Yeah.
They act like this
now. What I want is I want an alternate podcast to us featuring your wife and Moicano. It's like can be the Moicano and Schillen show, just talking about how awesome it is to move to America and become a citizen.
I imagine the person who watches for the first time is like, what? This guy's a retard. Like, they're third world country. Not third world country.
But like right now, Brock Lesnar is listening along and like nodding his head like, yeah, like don't get any healthcare up there. Like,
yeah.
So this will be an adventure. Keith is on the road. We're going to cobble this together best as we can. The UFC has given us a relatively low stakes environment for us to try this because we had the landmark blockbuster UFC 300 that, I mean, delivered by any reasonable expectation. Mm-hmm. We had a much deserved, much needed week off, and we're back here with UFC Vegas 91. It's a 12 fight card. It ended up being 12 fights, and we're going to have some fun. But in terms of everything we say about fight nights, it's Dana White's Saturday Night Contender Series. It's a card full of people you forgot were in the UFC. Just by any stretch, like sometimes I'll rattle off a stat about how many fighters on the card are on losing streaks right now. I'm going to throw something out there. This is a fight night card, so there's going to be a 6-fight undercard, 6-fight main card. The 6-fight undercard, Benitez versus Maheshate, Petrovic versus Liang, Mann versus Souza, Mays versus Machado, Hubbard, Figlak, and Yahya versus Victor Henry. I wouldn't be shocked if out of that entire 6-fight undercard, there's one fighter left in the UFC 2 years from now.
2 years from now?
There are so many fighters on that undercard that are 0-1 in the UFC, 0-2 in the UFC. People who lost on the Contender Series got called up anyway. It's rough sledding, man. Tell me something good about this card. Like, pull me out of this funk, this depression.
So, first of all, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. This card's great. I just want to be very clear. So, Ben can be on the Dana White's next hit piece, and I won't be. I'm saying this is one of the greatest fight night cards ever. I mean, this is absolutely amazing. It's gonna deliver. I mean, when you get the main event, you got a guy coming off a first round, like 1 minute knockout loss versus a guy who hasn't won in like 4 years. Like, what else? What else is it to ask for?
Whew.
I'm just saying, like, you're gonna be on one of those videos with Dana White,
Like just me in like black and white. Yeah, like me and Alex Lee from Fighting are going to be there, like with some quote that we said, like, yeah, oh my goodness. I mean, again, speaking in general, having fights is better than having no fights. The main card does have a couple of solid fighters. This card took a serious blow when it stopped being Nicolau versus Cop 2 and became Nicolau versus Perez. I mean, Cop and Perez are probably both top 10 flyweights right now, but it's a much less sexy matchup.
Which is ironic for Perez, considering he hasn't won in 4 years.
Yeah. Speaking slightly off topic for a moment, Manel Cop is slowly turning into a travel size Yoel Romero, where you can't rely on him to make weight. And he's a source of unintentional comedy a lot of the time with the crazy stuff he says. Like, Cop is sort of headed in that direction.
As long as it's not kissing like Luke Rockhold after he knocks him out.
That's assault. That's assault, Yoel. Come on, be better. I mean, who on this fight outside of the main event is closest to a title shot off of a win? I've got a name.
Event,
yeah,
it's probably. I'm going through the list real quick to make sure I don't forget. It's Karine Silva.
It's the winner of the Lipski Silva fight.
Lipski? Yeah,
I mean
Silva Lipski probably.
If you've got any other general thoughts about this card, let's get them off our chest and then dive into these prelims.
No, yeah, let's do this.
First up on the UFC Vegas 91 undercard is a lightweight matchup between Gabriel Benitez and Maheshate. Benitez, the 35-year-old Mexican, is 23-11 overall. He is 7-7 in the UFC. He is coming in off a loss. He's already fought once this year. It was at UFC Fight Night Ankalaev versus Walker back in January, where he got tapped out in the third round by Jim Miller. He'll look to bounce back from that, get back above 500 in the octagon against Maheshate. The 24-year-old from Central China is 9-3 overall. He is 1-2 since joining the UFC out of season 6 of Dana White's Contender Series. He won his first fight in the UFC, knocked out Steve Garcia in like a minute. Since then, he has back-to-back losses to Rafa Garcia and Slava Borshov. The most recent of those, the Borshov fight, was at this point 11 months ago. It was last May at UFC Fight Night Dern versus Hill. So Maheshate, a couple of losses, a pretty lengthy layoff, still just 24 years old, plenty of time to turn it around, and he is favored to do so. He is minus 200 right now. Benitez plus 170 on the comeback. Worth noting that Benitez is stepping in here for Anshul Jubilee, but he steps in on enough notice that this, I think it's been like at least a month that Benitez has been on this card, so not a super quick, it's not a super late notice replacement. Keith, I liked this matchup more when it was Maheshate versus Jubilee, because they both, even though Jubilee is, I think, 29 or 30 years old, they both had that kind of raw prospect feel in that they had just barely moved up to fighting UFC level opponents. And, you know, they showed a certain amount of potential while clearly still having some holes in their game. Here, instead, it's just your prospect, former prospect against a grizzled veteran. Tell me who you like in this one. And, I mean, your answer to that may answer this for me, but do you see top 15 upside in Maheshate?
Well, he's 24, so any 24-year-old I'd say has. I mean, top 15 is tough, especially in that weight class. But upside, I would say. So, people thought that the UFC 300 they gave us a week off to kind of recover from all that. It wasn't. It was when you have a card like this. I need to take a break after doing like tape study on a guy. Like I take tape study. I need a day. I need a day. So I have to keep doing that after a fight. That's why they gave us 2 weeks. Benitez, he's 35. The guy's been around for a long time. Southpaw. pretty technically sound kickboxer, moves well, works behind a strong jab, good power attacks, follow-up attacks, loves his straight left. He likes to target the body a lot, which I like. He's got plus power, good kicking game, some of the best calf kicks in the division, some really hard body kicks. Problem is he's really one-dimensional. He hardly ever wrestles, other than the one time he slammed Charlie Ontiveros. But when he has gone to the ground, he's actually a decent grappler. But again, he never uses it. He's a weak defensive wrestler. He was subbed quickly by Jim Miller. And you got to worry about his chin. I mean, David Onama knocked him out somewhat recently. Maheshate, he's a really big guy for the weight class. Only 24, so he's not even into his power years, and he's shown some power. He's a poise striker himself. Nice output. He's accurate. Good right hand. I mean, he blasted Steve Garcia. He's got a good kicking game. He throws a lot of teep kicks. He'll occasionally push the axe, toss out a flying knee. He's been hurt a lot because he has so many defensive issues. He backs straight up. He lacks head movement. I mean, he was knocked out in his last fight by Barashkov. I mean, that's a good striker, though. I haven't seen much of his offensive grappling, even though he's been in the UFC for a long time. But his defensive grappling is not good. I mean, Rafa Garcia took him down 6 times in their fight. This is actually a tough one. I think the betting line is off. I think it should be pretty much a pick 'em. Benitez, he might be faded, and at 35, I don't expect him to get better. But I'm still worried about the calf kicks. He could always just kick out the legs of Maheshate. That said, I think we have some fun exchanges on the feet. Maheshate, he does hit harder. He's still, he's at 24, so you could still make some improvements. I'm going to say Maheshate wins that decision. But I have, if you go in a confidence meter, I have no confidence in that pick.
I feel a lot of that. Maheshate, win or lose, again, I use the term raw prospect. He just... Well, for example, you mentioned that he got knocked out by Vyacheslav Borshov in his last fight. On the face of it, that isn't that embarrassing. Borshov is a good kickboxer, and the people that have really shown Borshov up at the UFC level are people that have kind of taken advantage of his deficiencies elsewhere. But the problem is that in that fight, I mean, Maheshate kind of made it easy for Borshov because he displayed almost all of the aspects of what you typically call tall man defense. Just, not moving his head off the center line, just pulling his head straight back. And it just made it easy for Borshov to kind of tee off on him. He's going to have a huge size advantage here. He's a big lightweight, whereas Benitez is not. And in fact, I mean, I should have mentioned this off the top, but Benitez has 14 fights in the UFC, and he only moved up to lightweight 2 or 3 fights ago. But most of his run has been at featherweight. I mean, I could see this turning into a ho-hum decision win for Benitez, where just Maheshate never makes an adjustment to the leg kicks and just loses 2 out of 3 rounds, just hobbling around, switching stances. I could see that happening. I could also see them just swinging wild in the first round, and one of them, probably Benitez, getting his jaw jacked. I'm leaning Maheshate as well, but kind of like you, if I were a betting man, I'd leave this one the hell alone. Just, it's hard to feel confident in Maheshate as a 2-1 favorite. He's too raw. He's too defensively vulnerable. There's too much.
He loses too much.
He loses. Yeah, he loses too much. I'm leaning Maheshate as well, but like I say, I wouldn't be shocked especially if Maheshate doesn't just plunk him early, if he's never able to make adjustments to the leg kicks and has a much, much harder time than expected. But I'm going to say he gets it done, and I'm actually going to say he finds the knockout. Give me Maheshate by second round knockout here, but not a ton of confidence in this one either. Next up on the undercard of UFC on ESPN 55 is a women's flyweight matchup between Ivana Petrovic and Liang. Petrovic, the 29-year-old hailing from Norway, is 6-1 overall. She is 0-1 since joining the UFC as the outgoing Aries FC women's flyweight champ. She made her debut last July at UFC on ESPN Strickland versus Magomedov, where she dropped a unanimous decision to Luana Carolina. So she will look to bounce back from that against Liang, who is looking to just bounce back in general. 27-year-old from China is 19-7 overall. She is 0-3 in the UFC. Worth noting that she's just 0-1 at flyweight. Her first 2 fights in the UFC were at strawweight. She got knocked out both times. So came back last August in a flyweight scrap with JJ Aldrich, and she got knocked out once again, this time in the second round. So still looking for her first win in the UFC on her 4th try, still looking to make it out of the second round for the first time on her 4th try. And she is not favored to get it done, to say the least. Petrovic is an overwhelming -500 favorite. Liang plus 380. I'm not going to jump out and jump all the way to Ivana Petrovic should not be a 5-1 favorite over anyone in the UFC, because I would immediately have to amend that with except Liang Na. Here's the thing, and I felt bad after the last time we previewed one of Liang's fights, just because I felt like I was so hard on her. But
then you watched her fight again?
Then I watched her fight again, and it happened again. Here's the thing. She didn't look like a UFC quality fighter coming out of WLF. I mean, WLF is a puppy mill of prospects. It really is. It's a Chinese promotion that runs a ton of fights and really just kind of smashes prospects together until some of them start to rise from the cream. She went on a pretty short win streak in WLF, all things considered. I mean, WLF is the kind of promotion that gave us people like Rong Zhu coming to the UFC like already 21-2 and stuff. Like, she was not on that level, and she's just one of those people that she's had 3 fights in the UFC at this point, and I still can't point to any one thing she really does well. She's very tall and thin. She was extremely tall and thin for 115. She's still very much on the tall and willowy side, even for a flyweight, but it just doesn't matter. Ariane Carnelosi and Silvana Gomez Juarez were both much stockier and heavier than her, and they were just easily able to crash the pocket, punch her in the face. She moved up a weight class. JJ Aldrich, more of the same. And JJ Aldrich is someone that I had underestimated for a while, but even so, she had an easier time with Liang Na than I thought she was going to. Petrovic is a pretty good striker with decent power. I think we'll probably just have a fun mid-range, mid-tempo, mid-power kickboxing match until Petrovic realizes that Liang can't manage the distance. She's taller and is going to have bigger reach, but Petrovic is going to be able to get inside on her, no problem. If she wants to clinch and try to do her damage in there, I think she's going to be able to. For me, the kind of defining characteristic of Liang's fight style is that she would prefer to be an outfighter and simply doesn't have the footwork or the physical strength to make other women fight that fight against her. So I think Petrovic is just going to chew her up. I kind of understand why the line is what it is, even if the onus is still on Petrovic to prove she belongs in the UFC herself. And Liang has not shown, I mean, she's shown decent durability. It's not like she's getting one-shotted by these women, but just they hit her so early, so often, and so hard that she ends up going down. Give me Petrovic by second round TKO here.
You forgot something, though.
Oh, boy, what'd I forget?
Na Liang, she has wushu experience. I'm still not sure if I know what that means. I don't know if that's like a TikTok dance or something. But it doesn't help her striking because she's a terrible striker. I mean, she walks right into punches. I mean, I go back to like the Silvana Gomez Suarez fight where she just was like, I don't know if she knew that she's allowed to move her head, you know, like it's not, you know, I think she thought she was in this, she thought she signed up for slap or something. And like, wait,
oh my goodness,
you close your hand during the slap competition. I mean, all she wants to do is, I mean, she wants to wrestle. She'll shoot for a takedown, but she's not very good at them. She'll often shoot without any setup. She'll shoot way too far away. She's really sloppy in her transitions and loses position, doesn't scramble well. Really, she just headlocks. And that only works against bums. And if she can't headlock,
even harder when you're 5 inches taller than everybody.
she'll pull guard to try to get the fight to the canvas. She's got some subs off her back. I mean, she prefers arm bars and triangles. I mean, that's her having a victory. Petrovic, I have not been impressed with her either, though. She's a southpaw. She's long, lengthy. She's a striker, but she lacks power because she throws nothing but arm punches. I like when she steps in and she has a decent left hand. She will look for takedowns herself, like body lock takedowns. If she gets the fight to the ground, she needs to improve her controls. Her hips are all over the place. She's a weak defensive wrestler. She struggles to get off the bottom, though she does have 2 subs. These are no fights where I watch film on something and I'm trying to write things about them and I couldn't think of nice things to say. You know, I'm not high in either. I mean, I won't pick them moving forward probably against anybody. This is mostly a striker versus grappler with neither one really being great at their discipline. I'm with you, though. I'm gonna go with Petrovic. She's bigger. She's longer. If she can keep the fight on the feet, she gets the better exchanges. She could get a knockout. I haven't really seen a lot of power from her, so I'm gonna say I don't know. Yeah, I'll go like a 3rd round TKO, but like a accumulation of strikes, not like a one punch knockout kind of thing.
The UFC Vegas 91 prelims power on with a strawweight matchup between Marnic Mann and Ketlen Souza. Mann, the 31-year-old Montana native, is 6-2 overall. She is 0-1 since joining the UFC as a veteran of season 6 of Dana White's Contender Series. She lost on the Contender Series. That was her first career loss. She went and won one fight in LFA, then got the call up to fight Josephine Lindgren Knudsen last September at UFC Fight Night. It was the Noche Mexico Fight Night, and she dropped a decision there. So her only 2 career losses have come in the UFC octagon. She will try not to make it 3 for 3 against Souza. Souza, 29-year-old Brazilian, is 13-4 overall, 0-1 in the UFC as well. She joined the UFC last June as the outgoing Invicta flyweight champ, and she got knee barred by Karine Silva, whom we'll be talking about a little later in the first round. That was at the Car France versus Albazi fight night. So 2 women still looking for their first UFC win. Souza is overwhelmingly favored to be the one who gets it done. She is minus 500. Marnic Mann plus 360 on the comeback. Considering that these are 2 women, again, still looking for their first win in the UFC, it's hard to see Souza as a credible 5-1 favorite, but I went into watching tape on these 2 with that in mind. And by the time I was done, I was like, nah, okay, maybe minus 500 isn't so far off after all. Just rewatching Marnic Mann's fights, there's nothing she does that's going to work on UFC strawweights. Her nickname is the Sawed-Off Savage, and she is generously listed at 5 feet tall. On her shot on the Contender Series, Bruna Brazil head kicked her, and I don't think Brazil's knee came above her belly button. It was the most lateral head kick not thrown by Tim Sylvia, I think, that I can remember in MMA history. And aside from that, Mann has mostly won her fights just by being like a stocky little ball of muscle, like a even smaller American Ariane Carnelosi, kind of throwing women on the ground with power, but not a whole lot of technique, and beating them up from there. She lost on the Contender Series. She went and picked on somebody her own size. Her win between the Contender Series and her UFC debut was against Amber Brown, who was an atomweight. It's just none of her stuff is going to work on UFC level strawweights. And most of the strawweights in the UFC are just going to tee off on her on the feet. I mean, Bruna Brazil got the highlight reel knockout, but Mann being short, stocky, kind of fighting compact when she boxes and not having great head movement. I mean, I expect Souza's just going to kind of tee off on her a bit here. I don't have a whole lot of faith in Souza as a top level future prospect either, but I'm also not taking too much from her getting matched up against Karine Silva, a good woman, a weight class up, and getting tapped out real quick. I expect that Souza's going to be able to keep Marnic Mann at a distance, mess her up with probably kicks to all levels. I don't know if we're going to get another head kick here, but I bet she's going to try some. I think her leg and body kicks are going to be on point, and I think it's going to be just a lot of Marnic Mann chasing Ketlen Souza around and getting her face messed up for her trouble. Give me Souza in a dominant decision here.
So these girls are strawweights. Who's the tallest flyweight, female flyweight?
That it's gonna be someone like Chikagian that's like 5'9", isn't it?
I don't know. I don't know, but I'm sure someone in the chat could throw that in.
I mean, hell, not Liang that is fighting a fight before them is 5'9", and she used to be a strawweight.
I don't think she's that big.
Liang's super.
Oh, I didn't realize she was that big. He'd be great.
Courtney Casey's another one who's super tall and skinny.
You'd be great right before you decide you're going to cut, like when Mann loses and you're going to cut her. Instead of cutting her, wait until like a really tall fighter and weight class above her opponent drops out, and before you break the news, you cut her, and then the next day you call her back up and be like, hey, actually, we got to fight if you're willing to move up to flyweight. And now they're so desperate to get back in the UFC that I'm not going to say no. But then you put her against the tallest person. So it's like, it looks like freaking Bilbo Baggins against Gandalf when they're walking next to each other.
It'd be like, yeah, Bea Malecki is coming back and she wants to try to drop to 125. So 6'1", will you take her on?
Yeah, Bea Malecki versus Mann. I didn't want to.
Megan Anderson's coming out of retirement.
Oh God, Megan Anderson. Megan Anderson. Me and her once had this like really long conversation, and it was like super cool. And then she like did a broadcast at Invicta, and then I saw her like after the show, but I don't think she was ready for me to be like come up behind her and be like, hey, it's good seeing you. Like she like turned, and she like as soon as she turned, she bit something, and she looked so annoyed that I was just like, hey, see you later. It was nice talking to you. Later.
Oh,
I was just like,
all right.
Like, damn, Megan. Like I wasn't creeping you.
Yeah.
like she freaking. I try to fight her. She just puts her hand on my head. I can't.
Yes.
I was talking about anything instead of talking about this fight right now. It's funny because I was going to say like Ketlen Souza is shorter for the weight class, but not in this fight. She won't be. She's got pretty good footwork. She tries to move a lot and kind of get her opponents to chase her, and then she stops and counter strikes. She relies a lot on head movement because she keeps her hands really low. She throws hard winging power shots, a lot of calf kicks. She looks when it gets in close, she looks her elbows in close. I mean, she busted up Christina Williams with a beautiful elbow inside. Even though that's a fight that I thought she should have lost, but she can wrestle a little bit. She's not a great wrestler though. She's a very weak defensive wrestler. She struggles to get off the bottom. When she was taken down, she was submitted quickly by Karine Silva. I mean, that's a huge step up in competition, though. She has shown cardio. Like, she's going 25 minutes to pass on the regional scene.
Yeah.
Marnic Mann, you mentioned, like, she's super short. She's not a great athlete. She works behind a jab, and she throws hard winging shots, but she's very hittable. That's because she doesn't move her head. She likes to pillar. She doesn't kick often. Again, if she does kick, like she got to kick in the ankle, like it'll look like that time Hasbulla kicked the other guy. Remember that? the first time they were like gonna fight. I don't. What's the other guy's name?
I can't remember.
Yeah, the other midget guy. Oh yeah, it's Uriah Faber. That's his name.
Oh yeah, you're the other guy.
Yeah, I shouldn't be making tall jokes over here. Like 5'8". Where was I? I have no idea where it was. But I mean, all she wants to do with the striking is to close the distance. She wants to get to the clinch and grind, and then try to get the fight to the ground. Work in there, try to land some knees. She'll body lock, kind of upper body throws. She likes to headlock a lot, which I hate. She'll even pull guard. I mean, she can be that desperate. Her BJJ is actually okay. She gets to the ground, she'll move to mount. Good back takes. She chains subs together well. She's got mean ground and pound. Just gets aggressive. But can be a little sloppy with the grappling. I mean, she got her back taken by Amber Brown. This is striker versus grappler, but I actually think both people have advantage in the respective areas. Like if it was a grappling match where they started on their knees and they did that like fist bump and like, okay, let's start rolling, I think Mannic would destroy Souza. That's why, like, screw it. Have fun with this card. Like, parlay Mann and Liang together. Like, I don't know what the payout would be on two, like.
It would be gigantic. Two, like, plus, like, I think they're plus 360, plus 380 each. And we have another line even wider than those coming on this card. Yeah. So if you want to do a three-person parlay.
Parlay all three of them. Fuck it. If Mannic can get the fight to the ground, I actually do think she can win. I see Souza smashing her as Mann is trying to come in and trying to close the distance. Souza is just a way better athlete. I see Mann eats way too many shots trying to close the distance, and Souza knocks her on the first round. First round TKO.
Next up at UFC on ESPN 55, the obligatory unranked heavyweight slobber knocker. It is Don'Tale Mayes versus Caio Machado. Mayes, the 32-year-old Louisville native, is 10-6 with one no contest overall. He is 3-4 with one no contest since joining the UFC as a three-time veteran of the Contender Series. Fought on season 1 and lost. Fought on season 2 and won, but was not immediately signed. Won on season 3. He did eventually make his way to the big octagon, and as I say, he's 3-4 with one no contest since then. Worth noting that the one no contest was him being thoroughly out wrestled by Hamdi Abdelwahab, after which Abdelwahab tested positive for an entire Walgreens worth of pharmaceuticals. But he fought most recently in November, dropped a unanimous decision to Rodrigo Nascimento, so he'll be looking to bounce back from that against Machado. Machado, 29-year-old Brazilian by way of Canada, is 8-2-1 overall. He is 0-1 since joining the UFC as a veteran of season 7 of the Contender Series. He made his UFC debut at Fight Night Allen versus Craig last November, where he dropped a unanimous decision to Mick Parkin. So he's still looking for his first octagon win. He is ever so slightly favored to get it. Machado, minus 130, Mayes plus 105. On the comeback. So I've already said one of our kind of go-to phrases, the unranked heavyweight slobber knocker. For those who've been watching or listening to our show for a couple of years and have wondered why we keep referring to the Kentucky Judo Federation, that would be because of Don'Tale Mayes originally. Take it away, Keith. Who you got in this one?
So as you were speaking, I just Googled Kentucky Judo Federation because I'm like, what if our boy just made that organization up? Because his ground game is terrible. He's a black belt and a legendary Kentucky Judo Federation champion. Listen, before everybody gets after me and says you're not a good detective, I just Google searched it, just those 3 words, nothing else, just a plain Google search, not the searches I have at my police station. And I didn't go to like the 8th page of Google, just quick, nothing comes up for Kentucky Judo Federation. We're gonna have to call your boy out on his legendary championship status.
The first rule of judo club is that you don't talk about judo club.
Oh yeah, that's fair. Fair enough. Yeah, it might. You know what? It might be too violent for the internet. That's what it is. They can't put it. It's like what was that? Faces of Pain, or what was that? Faces of Death.
Faces of Death. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe you have to get on the dark web to get the Kentucky Judo Federation. Oh God, the hits just keep coming. Oh man. I might watch basketball this weekend or something. Okay.
Just so you know, it takes a lot for Keith to say he's watching basketball.
No.
Yeah.
I'm still watching. I'm still watching. If there was a good wrestling, I'd watch that. I did watch the Olympic trials, obviously, this past weekend. I mean, he's not a great athlete, though he thinks he is. He moves around a lot. He'll throw a flying knee for no reason, which is, I guess, is kind of impressive because he's such a big dude. Mm-hmm. He likes to fight at both stances. He wants to be the one moving forward. He hates being pressured back. The time he loses when he's kind of pressured back, he can't handle pressure that well. He doesn't have the best output, but I think it's kind of been a way he's found a way to kind of control his cardio, because his cardio has really improved when he first started. I mean, he dropped some, his body looks a little better. Like I don't know if he's actually dropped weight, but he's dropped some fat and stuff. He's got good power, though. He can kind of telegraph. He'll drop his hand and throw like looping shots. He'll throw them from his hips. He also likes to throw a lot of lead uppercuts, which I hate. Supposedly he has a judo background. He got some clinch takedowns against Josh Breeze, so might be there. He's a weak defensive wrestler, though. He likes to play BJJ off his back. When he was on top against Parisian, I mean, he looked to advance on the ground. He actually looked for a crucifix. And like I said, his cardio has been improving. Machado's a southpaw. He's very aggressive on the feet. He's kind of a wild man, very sloppy. So there's a lot of big looping shots, constantly throwing overhands. In fairness, I thought his striking was a little cleaned up against Parkin, and actually the fight I thought he should have won. But he'll target the body. He's got a big kicking game. He's a weak offensive wrestler. If he gets the fight to the ground, though, he's a pretty good grappler. He's got back-to-back armbar sub wins before coming into the UFC, but he did slow down, and it was like 2 fights in a row where he really slowed down. Man, I'm not high on either. Like, who knows in this one? Oh man, I'm reading my notes. I don't want to say it. No, I'm not doing it. I was going to take Mays. I'm not doing it. I'll say Machado has improved his striking since his last fight. It continues to bring it in a little bit. He adds a couple takedowns. I'll say he gets a nod. Give me Machado by decision.
Man, I feel the same dilemma you do, because I'm not high on either guy. They've both shown serious flaws in their game. But of the two of them, Mays is the one that I'm more sure is what he is. Like, he's only 32. That means theoretically at heavyweight, he could have another 5 years to keep developing and another 5 after that to at least be on a plateau. But I think he kind of is what he is. You mentioned that his gas tank seems like a less of a liability, and I'm not sure that it is a change in cardiovascular capacity or body composition so much as learning to cope with what he has. Like, I completely agree with you on that one. Man, the thing about Machado, and I've said a few times about fighters debuting in the UFC, and I've been wrong on some, I've been right on others. What's his name? I'll pause this, or I'll cut this pause out. Like when Sergey Spivak debuted in the UFC, I remember saying, if 2 of your last 3 wins were over Tony Lopez and Travis Fulton, you're not ready for the UFC. And I was right. I mean, he's turned into a good fighter, but he wasn't ready at the time.
Yeah.
I mean, Caio Machado has 2 recent wins over Lee Meehan, not Jordan Meehan, Lee Meehan, who's like 55, 56 years old.
He better come get wins over Jordan Breen.
Yeah. Like, there was nothing on Machado's regional slate to indicate that he was ready, even for the bottom crust of UFC. fighters. Like Mays' 3 UFC wins are like, Roque Martinez, Josh Parisian, and the ghost of Andrei Arlovsky. Like, I mean, that's pretty much the bottom shelf. And I wouldn't feel comfortable taking Machado over any of those guys. Like, just if you lean as heavily on your striking as he does, but you have like that kind of like lack of power, it's going to be tough to like for me to be super confident in you. Like I think he probably beats Mays as well, but you know what? If he starts to get tired and Mays starts taking over around the halfway point of the fight, this is going to get, I don't want to say get really interesting because it probably won't be that interesting, but it could get unnecessarily close. Give me Machado by decision here as well, but he would be well served to get to business right away, put Mays on the back foot, and rack up a lead. Lightweights are up next at UFC on ESPN 55, as it is Austen Hubbard and Michal Figlak. Hubbard, the 32-year-old Colorado native, is 15-7 overall. He is 3-5 across 2 stints in the UFC. He's 0-1 this time around. He went 3-4 back in like 2018 to 2020, was released by the UFC, went and got a regional win over Julian Lane, which was enough for the UFC to let him bang again. He returned to the UFC at UFC 292 last August, where he got tapped out in the second round by Kurt Holobaugh. So he'll be looking to get back in the win column here against Figlak. 27-year-old Pole by way of England is 8-1 overall. That's the good news. The bad news is that his lone career loss came in his UFC debut. That was last September at UFC Paris, where he dropped a unanimous decision to Fares Ziam. Prior to that, he'd been a standout in Cage Warriors. As I mentioned, he is Polish, but has lived and trained for quite a while in the UK. Odds on this one, fairly close, but Figlak is the mild to moderate favorite. He's minus 150 or so. Hubbard plus 120 on the comeback. Michal Figlak, when I watch his tape, and just kind of look at just the general tail of the tape stats, like his age, his size, I feel like he should be better than he is. Like, he's a good size for the division. He's just 27 years old. Had a couple decent wins in Cage Warriors. Like, he never got to the point of fighting the really good guys in Cage Warriors. Cage Warriors has a deep enough lightweight division that, I mean, he went undefeated there. I think he was 8-0 coming into the UFC, and I think 7 of the 8 fights have been in Cage Warriors. And he's well-rounded. Like, he's a pretty good wrestler. He's a pretty good striker. But just somewhere between the raw skill set and the actual in-cage performances, it didn't come together against Ziam. And I'm just not sure whether he deserves a pass for that. He's fighting a French guy in France, but I mean, he went in as the favorite. Figlak was the favorite in that fight, and he just looked a step behind Ziam the whole time, like in the wrestling, in the striking as well. I can't remember my scorecard, but I think he lost all 3 rounds. Because if I'm wiping that from my mind and I say, okay, octagon jitters, hostile territory, whatever, I do think he's a better fighter than Austen Hubbard. Hubbard is shown to be an offensively pretty potent fighter, but just with a hard ceiling, due either to athleticism, fight IQ. Just too many of his UFC opponents have been able to kind of pull him into their style of fight. In particular, like strong guys with good ground games have been able to haul him down and really do work on him down there. If Figlak is smart enough to follow that same pattern, I think he should be able to do it. If he elects to stand and bang on the feet, he should have a slight advantage there as well. But that does open up more avenues to victory for Hubbard, who, whatever his flaws may be, does hit hard. Again, my expectations of Figlak are tempered after the loss to Ziam, but I do still think he's a good addition to the UFC, whereas I'm not sure Hubbard is UFC level. So give me Figlak by decision here. And if I'm someone who's watching Figlak as a prospect or, future possible contender, I want to see him take the easiest route to victory here. And that for me would be trying to take Hubbard down and just go to work from top position, like several other fighters have been able to do. Figlak by decision for me.
Yeah, this is This is a tough fight. Like Hubbard, I've never really got a good feel on this guy. He's not a great athlete. He's very big. He's a big dude. I met him in Boston. He's a very big guy for the weight class. He's not great on the feet. He drops, like, technically, I should say, he drops his hands, pulls his head straight back, keeps his chin high. Offensively, he's much better. He throws some tight combos. He doesn't load up. He has okay power. Has some deep kicks. I like his step and knees. I mean, hurt Mark Madsen with one, which was, at that time was pretty solid. He's got a solid low kick game. He is heavy on his front foot, which makes him open to leg kicks himself, like all the way back to like the Aaron McKenzie fight where McKenzie had success kicking him tough. I'd say I think I like his wrestling a little better than you. I think he's an underrated wrestler. I mean, he out-grappled Kyle properly. He out-wrestled Aaron McKenzie. He showed a good get-up game against Mark Madsen, though Mark Madsen never really transitioned. He got to heavyweight too late. He's got mean ground and pound and beat up McKenzie on tough with it. But his fight IQ is not the best. Like, he was grappling against Kurt Holobaugh, which was Holobaugh's best avenue of victory, and then gets subbed in his last fight. Figlak, I like his output. He's a good output pressure striker. He throws tight combination attacks with combos, tight boxing. I like that he targets the body. He's got decent pop. Some of his issues are defensively, like lacks head movement. He was open like Zion had a lot of success. I think Zion's a good fighter, especially in the striking, though. Like, I was surprised that Figlak was a favorite of that one. I think you're higher on his wrestling than I am. He tries to wrestle, but I don't think he's that good at it. Like, he was struggling to get Zion down. Again, that could have been a little bit of pass, and there's some tall man defense going on with it. He's a weak defensive wrestler himself. He doesn't have a single submission on his record, though he did almost catch Zion in an armbar. I'm not sure about this fight. Figlak definitely has the much higher upside. I don't really like his grappling. If Hubbard's smart, and that's a big if, because that's one of the things I've had against him, he could use Figlak's pressure to kind of set up his entries and use his underrated offensive grappling. You know what? I'm going to go the upset. I'm going to say Hubbard mix in a few takedowns, win some swing rounds, and pulls it. Figlak, you said, is only a slight favorite, which is kind of ironic.
Like minus 150.
Yeah, kind of ironic that he's a slight favorite against Hubbard, but he was a favorite against Zion, who I think is way better than Hubbard. But give me Hubbard. I'll say Hubbard by split decision.
All right. We have our first disagreement of the card, and you were the first of us to pick an upset on the card. So we'll have something interesting to talk about on the recap anyway. Next up at UFC on ESPN 55, and at least as the card is constituted as of the beginning of fight week, the top prelim is a bantamweight clash between Yahya and Victor Henry. Yahya, the 39-year-old Brazilian, is 28-11-1 with one no contest overall. He is 13-5-1 with one no contest since joining the UFC as a veteran of WEC, K1 Heroes, and several other top promotions of the late 2000s. Worth noting that he's 9-3-1 with one no contest since dropping the bantamweight. He is coming in off a loss. He got knocked out in the first round by Montel Jackson at Fight Night Pavlovich versus Blades almost exactly a year ago. Prior to that, he'd been on a 2-fight win streak, but that goes all the way back to 2021 at that point. He'll look to get back in the win column here as he pushes towards his 40th birthday. He will have to get past Henry to do it. Henry, 36-year-old Californian, is 23-6 with one no contest overall, 2-1 with one no contest in the UFC. That no contest came in his last appearance. He fought at UFC 294 last October, and after a fun back and forth first round, he was nut-shotted into the hospital by Javid Basharat. It was one of the weirder moments of last year in terms of officiating. If you remember it, it's the one where the doctor basically accused Henry to his face of lying about getting hit. It was bad. Yeah. Anyway, it ended up being a no contest. They never did rebook the fight. I don't blame Henry for not wanting to fight Basharat again after that. But he's here trying to get back in the win column and hopefully keep his wedding tackle intact. He is overwhelmingly favored to do so. On a card where we've already had two minus 500 favorites, Henry noses just past them. He is minus 510. Yahya around plus 360 as your underdog. Man, so we just got done talking about UFC 300, where we had a, almost 4-hour preview. And part of it was because there were so many, if not legendary, at least very storied fighters that, it took a little doing to introduce them properly. If that ended up being Jim Miller's last fight, I didn't want our preview of him to be each of us talking for like 3 minutes about what he's done in the last 18 months. Yahya gets a little of that shine from me. He is one of the last true old school specialists left in mixed martial arts. We're talking about a guy. Yeah, he's 39. He was a top 10 featherweight 15, almost 15 years ago. Actually, yeah, more than 15 years ago. I'm talking about like back in 2007 when he's tapping out Mark Hominick and stuff in WEC. He's probably skirting the edges of the featherweight top 15 at that point. He might have been just one more WEC win away from getting a shot at Jose Aldo. Think about that. 21 submissions out of 28 career wins, no KOs or TKOs. Like he's not even ever accidentally knocked somebody out. Even Damian Maia, another person you'd put up as another one of the true specialists, had 1 or 2 TKOs on his record. He's smacking a guy around on the ground, trying to soften him up for the back take, and the ref jumps in. Yahya doesn't even have that. And it's ironic because compared to Maia, Yahya has always loved to test his luck on the feet more. I mean, we're talking about my first big memory of Yahya was his wild 2-minute fight with Hominick, where, he was getting his ass kicked 10 ways from Sunday, manages to haul him down and chokes him out, and the whole thing's over in under 2 minutes. But that's within that same 6-month span, he won a gold medal at Abu Dhabi. Then he went over to K1 Heroes and fought Kid Yamamoto and tried to strike with him. Like this hilarious, silly little man has been so much fun for us for so many years. Yeah. He is hilarious in interviews, mostly just because he seems so like unassuming. Like he seems surprised by his own success. The guy's a 2-time Mundials winner. He's an Abu Dhabi gold and silver medalist, and he seems as surprised as anyone every time he wins a fight. Like, how can you not love that man? Here are the problems.
Hold on. He needs one moment of winning by knockout so he can scream jiu-jitsu when he knocks someone out.
That's what we need.
And he can get a stripe on his black belt.
They'll bring Glover Teixeira. You got any more of those belts, Glover? You got got any scraps left over for making Paredes? It probably fit on Yahya. Here's the problem with Yahya. And in 2007, here was the problem with Yahya. He was an incredible grappler, like good from top position, fine from guard, that didn't have great ways to bring the fight to the ground. And he was a willing striker who was terrible defensively and just super, super hittable. That was the problem when he was like 24. At 39, it's all of that times 10. And he's become a little bit more injury prone. He didn't fight at all in 2022. The game has progressed so far since he's been around that, I mean, he was a slightly undersized featherweight way back in the day. Now he's dropped to 135, and he's even more undersized for 135 than he was for 145 15 years ago. There's a very limited number of people.
Imagine him next to Aljamain Sterling.
Imagine him next to Aljamain Sterling. Imagine him next to Raul fucking Rosas Jr. Like, imagine him next to Sean O'Malley. Like, Sean O'Malley could like rest his drink on Yahya's head, and probably would if they put him next to him. Yeah.
Marnic Mann is tapping him on the head.
At open workouts, they should just play one-on-one, like on like 7-foot rims, like see if one of them can dunk on the other. Yahya, having said that, he's 9-3-1 with one no contest at bantamweight. To be 9-3-1 in arguably the UFC's best division at this point in his career is pretty damn impressive. But there's just a very limited number of people that are winnable matchups for him at this point in his physical aging, at this point in the development of the sport. And Victor Henry ain't it.
No.
Like I say on any of these previews, when somebody is say greater than minus 300 favorite, I always start with the inverse proposition. Okay, in order for the upset to happen, what would we need to see? And this is one more than the other two 5-1 lines we have in this card, where in order for Yahya to win, Henry would have to make an incredibly stupid mistake. And I'm not saying that's out of the realm of possibility. Henry's main problem has always been that he's a little bit too freewheeling. I think he's a little too confident. He gets into the flow. He's having fun. I could see Henry testing his luck on the ground against Yahya. He is a very good grappler himself. He's bigger than Yahya. Even though he's no spring chicken himself, he feels closer to his prime physically. He's a longtime Josh Barnett guy. There's that little Josh Barnett chip on the shoulder. Like, I want to show that catch wrestling is like beats jiu-jitsu. There's any number of reasons that he might make the poor choice to like willingly engage on the ground with Yahya. But that's what it would take in order for Henry to lose this fight. Because if they go in to start swinging, even if he gets clocked by Yahya, just gets caught flush with something, Yahya doesn't have the power to really make the fight pivot on that. And Yahya trying to bring this fight to the ground, you know, with like the world's slowest single leg, or by trying to like force the clinch against Henry, is just going to get his face mauled. Yeah, this is one of those 5-1 lines where I totally get it, because there aren't really any plausible routes to victory for the underdog that don't involve the favorite making a huge mistake. And Henry does make mistakes sometimes, but I don't think he's going to make any bad enough. Like, for Henry to lose this fight, he would almost have to do the grappling version of what Max Holloway did 2 weeks ago at UFC 300. Just Henry points at the floor and then like lays down and like waits for Yahya to get in his guard. Like, it would be like the, you know, he's not going to do that. He's going to chew Yahya up on the feet and maybe test his luck later once Yahya is already beat up and exhausted. Maybe he'll test his luck there on the ground, but I expect Henry to win a dominant decision here. I'm not going to say he gets the knockout necessarily, but it wouldn't surprise me for him to get one by accumulation of damage on a Yahya who is very desperate to bring the fight to the ground by the third round.
I already gave away who I'm picking. I mean, Rani Yahya, what a legend this guy is. What is he going to do? Like, I'm not even looking at my notes. He's just going to swing as hard as he can, just throwing haymakers until he closes his distance, where he's shooting in the hips. He's got good entries and everything, but he's not going to be able to go through. So, like, pull guard underneath, toss up submission. That'll last for about 5 minutes while he's eating hammer fists from Henry until Yahya is completely gassed. He eats hammer fist. Henry tells him get up. He gets up. He gets dropped. He starts butt scooting. Henry tells him get up. He gets dropped. He starts butt scooting. And it just goes on and on until the referee goes, I can't sit anymore. Yahya is all bloodied up, and that's the end of the fight. So the ultimate would be if you just do this crazy haymaker and caught him and won by knockout. I love how you said he doesn't even win by accident. Like, he's the one he'd go to the fair to like hit the big hammer thing on, and he'd miss. Like, or just wouldn't even move. I think he'd hit it. Then like I almost knocked my kid out by accident. So it was one time we were like, me and family members, like, go to this campground or like this pool, and like there's a big, like, we have groups of families that go, and they're like, we're all wrestling around the pool, and I'm taking like the teenage boys and I'm throwing them, and like around, and they're like, they're like 13, 14, so like 110 pounds. And so I'm throwing them like this. My daughter jumps over, and she's at the time, I don't know, she's like 9, so she's like 68 pounds or something. I throw her, and then like a couple of the high school boys come, and I'm like really throwing them, right? And then my son, he's like 1 year old at the time. But because I'm like just launching kids and kind of putting all my muscle into it, he comes over and tries to like grab me, and he's got floaties on. He's I don't think he has all his hair yet. He looks like freaking Charlie Brown. He's got like a bald head, big old, like his head is bigger than his body. His head's still bigger than his body and his ball. And he like tries to like be one of the. He probably took every energy in the world just to on his floaties to get over to me. Tries to grab me, and I'm gonna like grab him, and I'm not thinking. Don't put all your power into it like I did. Like the 30 kids in a row before him, and I just take him and I go, holy shit, he goes flying. It looked like a punt at the freaking Dallas Cowboys Stadium. He's flipping head over legs like a freaking punt. My friend Josh, to his credit, like dives and catches it. I'm like, oh my God, my carrying trip almost became a murder. And they've been looking for me ever since, and that's why I'm hiding out at this place I am right now. Give me Henry my first round TKO.
All right, sounds good. The 6-fight main card of UFC Vegas 91 opens up with a featherweight clash between Jonathan Pearce and David Onama. Pearce, the 31-year-old Tennessean, is 14-5 overall. He's 5-2 since joining the UFC out of season 3 of Dana White's Contender Series. He lost his last time out. He lost his UFC debut back in 2019. He lost his last time out. In between, he had 5 wins in a row. He appeared most recently at UFC Fight Night Allen versus Craig back in November, got tapped out late in the second round by Joanderson Brito. As I mentioned, that snapped a 5-fight win streak for him that saw him, really creeping up to the edges of the top 15 in one of the hardest divisions to do so. Was turned aside by Brito. He'll look to regain some of that momentum here against Onama. Onama, 29-year-old Kansas City native, now fighting out of Greater Denver, is 11-2 overall. He is 3-2 since joining the UFC just a little over 3 years ago. He lost his debut. It was a short notice debut up a weight class against Mason Jones. He dropped a decision there. Since then, he has wins over Gabriel Benitez, Garrett Armfield, and Gabriel Santos, and a loss to Nate Landwehr. His most recent appearance, the Santos win, was a second-round knockout. That was at the Emmett versus Topuria Fight Night last June. Odds here, Pearce is a moderate favorite. He's minus 180, minus 185 or so. Onama plus 150 on the comeback. Tell me what you think of this fight and who you think wins and how. I mean, I'm cautiously optimistic about both of these guys as future factors in the division. Like for what it's worth, as much shit as we talked on this card, the main card is much, much better than the undercard. Like the prelims, that might be the worst undercard we see in the UFC this year. There's some decent stuff on the main card, at least I think. Tell me if you disagree.
Yeah, that was like my middle child today saying she was the most well behaved. I looked at her, she's like, "Well, I'm more well behaved than Robbie," and I was like that's what they're saying. No, nobody else in the world will understand what that reference means. But there's another child that's like, both me and my wife are like, "What?" Like, my oldest is an angel.
Oh.
That's what that reference meant. And even my middle child to be like, all right, yeah. So it's basically saying, but then my youngest son, so that's basically what we're saying. Like this, compared to the prelims, that's not saying much. But that said, Pearce has kind of become one of my guys. You know, where I've just liked this guy. He wins because he understands what he has to do to win, and he constantly puts himself in the best position possible to win the match. He presses the action. He marches forward. He works behind a jab. He likes these like long, rangy strikes. that he falls in to close the distance. He'll throw like a flying knee to get his opponent's back. He'll push kick him, hard kicks the body. Everything he's doing is just to kind of close the distance, get to the clinch, grind, use his frame, get to the body lock. He hit Americani with this like rolling Kimura, though I wouldn't really count on that. If he's in range, he'll shoot entries as they get to the cage. He isn't an explosive wrestler, but he has this like determination and mindset to get the fight to the ground. He's good at winning scrambles. He lands. He was landing some nice elbows and scrambles against Makwan and Marikani. He's got good control when the fight hits the ground. He knows he must like pin his opponent down and wear them down before he advances position. He's got good ground and pound. When taken down, he gives up his back to get back up, which is concerning. He has been submitted in the past. He was just quickly submitted by Brito. Though I'm still not really worried about his submission defense. He's got strong cardio. He showed he can win heavy grappling battles, which is you better have a gas tank to do that, and that's what he knows. Like he knows I have the gas tank going. My opponent probably won't. Onama, he's a well-rounded fighter. He's a good striker. He can fight at both stances. He's got good output. He's got fast hands. He's explosive. Not many tells. They're short shots. Good variety in his strikes. He's got good power. Though sometimes he'll kind of, even though I just said he has short shots, when he's kind of working, when he sets to his power shots, he'll kind of open up a little bit, kind of leave himself out of position, which can kind of leave him open to be countered. I think the best is the way he works the body, though, with step-in knees. He does drop his hands a little bit, and he'll invite a brawl when he doesn't really need to, which is concerning. Mean calf kicks, though he'll throw him naked. He's a solid grappler, like a really underrated grappler. He uses those long arms to like get to a snatch single. Not the great defensive wrestler. Mason Jones took him down about 8 times. But he has his submission threat. He's got 4 subs. He subbed Garrett Armfield. He did gas a little against Nate Landwehr, but I give him a pass for that. Nate Landwehr does that to everybody. But he showed he could take a beat. And even when he was tired, he kept showing the heart, and it was coming forward. Onama probably has the higher upset. If you told me one guy would be a top 5 fighter, I'd say Onama. He's 10 times the athlete that Pearce is. But I'm very confident Pearce is going to win this fight. He's going to force Onama back, and then he's going to wrestle nonstop. He's going to wear him out with his wrestling. I think he eventually breaks Onama's will, and he finishes him with a ground and pound, say, in the second round.
Yeah, I totally agree with your take here, because I went into this one kind of expecting to see sneaky upset potential for Onama. I completely agree with you that he has a ton more upside. And even as he's had mixed to positive results in the UFC, just, we've seen things that like we've seen encouraging signs, but this is the wrong matchup at the wrong time for him for all the reasons you mentioned. Pearce, you mentioned his fight IQ. I like that observation a lot. He makes the most of the skills and the athletic gifts that he has. Like his losses have been to Joe Anderson Brito, who at least at this point in their respective development is just a better fighter. He's a better athlete, better fighter. And he was one of the last recipients of the magic of, first round Joe Lozon. That there's not too much shame about that, especially in your UFC debut. His win over Darren Elkins was really, that's where I kind of turned my narrative on Pearce a little bit, because that was exactly the kind of fight I figured Pearce could dominate early and Elkins would wear on him later. But instead, Pearce just got nastier and nastier as the fight went along. There was an arguable 10-8 round in there. If he was slowing down by the end, I didn't see it. All I saw was that Elkins was a complete bloody mess, like Elkins is in all of his fights, but without the stirring Rocky style comeback. That, combined with the fact that I don't think Pearce is going to make any big strategic or tactical blunders, just make it hard for me to picture Onama winning this one. He could certainly just catch him with something nasty, hurt him on the feet. He could certainly grab something in transition and end up like taking his back and choking him out. But those are the outside chance. Like if they happen, I won't be that shocked. But as it is, just Pearce has been too solid, too reliable. This is one of those fights where if they ran it back 2 years from now, maybe Onama is a 2 or 3 to 1 favorite. But right now, this is Pearce's fight to win. I've got Pearce by decision as well here. Next up on the UFC Vegas 91 main card is a welterweight clash between Tim Means and Uros Medic. Means, the 40-year-old Albuquerque native, is 33-15-1 with 1 no contest overall. He's 15-12 with 1 no contest across multiple stints in the UFC. He's 13-10 with 1 no contest this time around. He won his last time out. He fought at UFC Fight Night Fizzy versus Gamrot last September, knocking out Andre Fialho in the 3rd round. That snapped a 3-fight losing streak for the Dirty Bird. Now, just having recently turned 40, he's going to try to start off a win streak. He'll need to get past Medic to do so. Medic, 30-year-old Serbian American by way of Alaska, by way of Southern California, is 9-2. Overall, he's 3-2 since joining the UFC out of season 4 of Dana White's Contender Series. He is coming in off of a loss. He got tapped out late in the 2nd round by Miktabek Orolbai at UFC Fight Night Allen versus Craig last November. Prior to that, he'd been on a 2-fight win streak, both of them knockouts over Omar Morales and Matthew Semmelsberger. So he's looking to get back in the win column. He is favored to do so, to say the least. Medic is minus 310, Means plus 250 on the comeback. Keith, do you like Medic better up at welterweight, and do you think he gets past Means on Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, the guy's a huge dude, so it's not like I've really come around on the, moving up is a better move. Now, obviously, it's not work for everybody, but generally, I don't support being stuck there. I don't know what his weight cut was, but he was a young guy and everything. He's got tough tests. I mean, Tim Means, he's kind of one of our guys. He's just this grizzled veteran that's always a tough out. He's a southpaw, never been a great athlete, but he's technical and he's smart. He's long and lengthy. He's a counter striker with a high guard defense, good output, and he's a gamer, man. He's tough as nails. He's going to get stronger as the fight goes on. He will march down his opponent, throwing bombs in the pocket. Underrated power, huge kicking game. Loves those teep kicks, the calf kicks. He likes to throw kicks and kind of follow him into the pocket and gets inside, and he uses those, he has legendary knees inside. He can wrestle a little bit. He likes, like an over underhook, and then, get to one side and then kind of step across and pinch the knee on the trip. He's been in a lot of wars though, and I'm always worried about, when these guys, the cliff, just they fall off the cliff, or when the ending coming, is it coming, how fast is it coming up? Yeah, his chin was falling a little bit against Max Griffin. He was surprisingly subbed against Alex Moreno, but then he looked better recently. So, Medic, the guy's southpaw. He's going to be big for the weight class. He's. I'm trying to think for a second. Him and Jalen Turner, right? Yeah, fought each other at lightweight. Is that the biggest lightweight match of all time?
It might, man, now that you mention it, it might be. If it's not them, it's another one of Turner's fights.
Right. Like who? But if those two guys fought at middleweight, would that surprise you? Like they fought over middleweight like a couple years from now?
No. They're both taller than Robert Whittaker and Yoel Romero, and those guys fought for a title.
Oh yeah, Kelvin Gastelum.
Yeah.
So I mean, he's a big middleweight. Like he's not obviously be a welterweight. Hell, he'd be a big middleweight. He's long and lengthy. He's shown great distance striking in the past. I mean, Omar Morales really struggled to get inside on him. Matthew Semmelsberger, he was just busting him up at the end of his punches. He's a good kickboxer. He's extremely aggressive on the feet. The guy will come out like a berserker sometimes, like a guy possessed. I mean, I go back to Alan Cruz. I have said it before. He knocked out Alan Cruz before the Cruz even knew the fight started. But the problem is, two-edged sword. He tried doing the same thing against Jalen Turner, and he was walking right into big shots. I like his accuracy. He fights a little like Alexander Slamenko. Like he'll hit, and then he'll throw like a spinning attack. He knocks Matthew Semmelsberger out with a spinning elbow. He showed against Morales, he kind of sat back a little bit more and was just picking him apart from range, showing patience. He's got very good power. I like his push kicks where he forces his opponent back. His kicks are dangerous. I think I always go back to like the Mikey Rolls fight, but he crushed Mikey Rolls with a body kick. Similar to his opponent, Tim Means, he also likes to follow up the long strikes to get inside and then throw like a big shot. He'll like throw a kick to kind of or a teep kick or something to get his opponents to kind of cover up, and then he follows that in. Now he's in a closer range, and that's when he falls to the big shot. He's not much of an offensive wrestler. He's a weaker defensive wrestler. Probably a little bit of his Achilles heel. He struggles to get off the bottom. I said this last time on the recap show. He doesn't. He had this underhook. He wasn't using underhook to get to his feet, but he has a good submission like games off his back. He uses those long legs to attack knee bars and heel hooks and stuff. This is tough. Like Tim Means fights are always tough. Those Grizzly veterans are always tough to pick because you don't know if they're like, the deeper the fight goes, the more I feel good about Tim Means because he's a gamer. He's a guy who will weather the storm and then come back on you. Or like it never seems like it's fun to fight Tim Means.
Oh no.
Well, on the flip side, the end could be over right away. And I think he's showing little signs of that. So I'm going to go with Medici. I think Medici's going to come out like a berserker. I say he's going to catch him. I'm going to say he catches him early. I'm going to say it's going to be his best moment and the physicality of everything that Medici does. It would be too much for Mins at this point of his career. Give me Medici by first round TKO.
Yeah, I would love to differ with you here. I think Means is a trap fight for just about anybody outside the top 15 at 170 pounds. And I mean, he potentially is one for Medic as well. It's been disturbing because in Medic's 2 losses in the UFC, the one to Jalen Turner at lightweight, even if again they're the hugest lightweights ever, and then against Orolbai in his most recent appearance at welterweight, both involved him really getting dominated on the ground. Like it was shocking just how much, like how quickly Turner ran through him once they were on the ground. And then Orolbai just kind of ragdolled him, threw him all over the place. And this is a guy who stepped up on short notice. And, like he definitely got the better of him on the ground in the first round, got the better of him on the ground again in the second on the way to tapping him out. But what those guys did to him is not really the way Means' submission game works. Like he's got an underrated sub game, but it mostly involves like snatching stuff standing. I can't imagine he'll want to follow Medic to the ground and try to do what Turner or Orolbai did to him. So if Means wins, he wins a Tim Means Dirty Bird special on the feet where, he tries to have an outside kickboxing match with Medic, tries to force it all the way in if he has to. Medic isn't the best athlete, but he's got a lot more, athleticism left to him at 30, well, about 31. He turns 31 on the day of the fights. Then Means, who's 40 at this point. Man, this is a fight that even earlier in Medic's UFC run, like 2 or 3 years ago, I would have been more comfortable taking Means in the upset. But I'm with you. I think the wars over the years, the wear and tear, the just being 40 with, the kind of past that he freely admits to having. It is catching up to him, and this is the wrong time for him to be fighting Uros Medic. I see no reason to pick something different from you just to be different. I think Medic probably knocks him out in the first round too. Next up on the UFC on ESPN 55 main card, because the UFC loves us so much, we get not one but two unranked heavyweight slobber knockers on this card. This one is Austen Lane versus Jhonata Diniz. Lane, the 36-year-old Florida native, is 12-4 with one no contest overall. He is 0-1 with one no contest since joining the UFC as the former Fury FC heavyweight champ and a two-time veteran of Dana White's Contender Series. He fought on the Contender Series back in season 2, where he got knocked out by Greg Hardy in the first round, came back in season 6 and won and was signed. And 2 fights in the UFC. He fought Justin Taffa both times. Both fights together, I think, took less than 2 minutes. There was an accidental eye poke in his debut back in June of last year. So he came back in September at UFC 293, and Taffa knocked him out with the legal parts of the glove in just 1 minute and 22 seconds. So Lane still looking for his first UFC win. He'll try to get it against Diniz. Diniz, 32-year-old Brazilian, is a perfect 6-0 as a professional mixed martial artist. This will be his UFC debut. He fought on the Contender Series last September, knocking out Eduardo Neves in the first round. Odds here favor the newcomer pretty substantially. He is minus 250, Lane plus 200. I'm not super high on either of these guys. I mean, obviously I'm not high on Lane at this point. He's 36 and just hasn't really shown himself to be UFC heavyweight material. And I say that knowing exactly what UFC heavyweight material implies, and he still ain't it. Diniz, he has a few things going for him. He's only 32. You have to like that. As I mentioned about Caio Machado earlier, that means about Dontel Mace, he's got another 5 years to keep developing and probably another 5 after that to at least keep performing at about the same level. He is legit huge. Like, he's a for real heavyweight body. He's not surreal gone from a standpoint of athleticism, but he's fairly nimble and coordinated. So he has a few things going for him, but the people he was blowing up in Brazil, and even the guy he knocked out on the Contender Series, he has not. Austen Lane is going to be the best guy he's fought so far, and it's Austen Lane. Like, this is low level stuff, but the problem isn't just that Austen Lane is flawed, because every heavyweight in the world outside of like the 5 or 6 of them is pretty seriously flawed in some regard or another. But Lane is flawed in ways that put him on other people's highlight reels. He's a huge guy. I mean, he's not the heaviest guy, but he's huge wingspan. He's a former football player. I believe he was an edge rusher, and you can kind of tell he's like a 6'6" guy with a huge wingspan, but not like, 290 pounds of muscle. He's a little more wiry than that, but terrible striking defense for a guy as tall as he is, with as long a reach as he is. He has no luck keeping people on the outside. His head's always straight up, poor footwork, back straight up. Shorter guys can crowd him. I mean, these guys are probably going to stand in the middle of the cage and throw down. And of the two of them, I expect that Diniz is going to find Lane's chin first, early, often. If Lane cracks Diniz, this could all be over the other way in 90 seconds. I mean, Lane does hit really hard. He swings hard and he's really big, but yeah, I think the line here, the minus 250, just reflects better confidence that in the slobber knocker we're going to get, Diniz is probably going to be the one that finds Lane's chin. If Diniz tries to bring the fight to the ground, I mean, I'd be interested to see that. He's probably not going to find many easier takedowns than Austen Lane, who is 6'6", got long legs and stands straight up. But I don't expect him to try it. I think he's just going to knock him out on the feet. Give me Diniz by first round KO.
Yeah. So Yeah, I just get right to this one. I mean, Austen, I mean, he's an athletic dude. I mean, he's a former NFL player. They're going to mention that 50 times every time he walks out. No, between the time the show starts and by the time he exits the cage, he's very raw on his feet. He's not very technical with his boxing. He drops his hands. He keeps his chin high in the air. Kind of just swings. He likes kicks. He's got good teep kicks. He'll throw them though without a setup and kind of leave him to be open counter. So I should say like he hits hard, not that he's good at. Not much of an offensive wrestler. He's a very bad defensive wrestler. I mean, he was mounted in the Contender Series. If he's on top, he's a heavyweight. So he's got a hard ground and pound. But you have to worry about his chin. I mean, he was knocked dead in his last fight against Justin Tafa. Diniz, it's really hard to know much about him considering his fights have not lasted very long. Now he is a decorated kickboxer, but that is becoming less and less important to me. As actually kickboxers have done more successful, but I knew that everybody's decorated in kickboxing. I've never heard someone say, "Hey, he did kickboxing, but he wasn't that good." Like he was pretty mediocre. It's always like everyone was a world champion. It's like
so many organizations out there that they were all champ of something.
Yeah. He's pretty technically sound striker. He can fight at both stances. He's accurate. He marches on his foe. He has serious power. I mean, he's got 6 wins, all by first round knockout. But he's a classic Muay Thai striker. He doesn't lack. He lacks head movement. He doesn't move his head. He getting hit a lot on his Contender Series matchup. Everyone remembers he had this spectacular knockout, but he was getting tagged a lot. I haven't seen any of his ground game. I have no clue about his ground game. So, yeah, maybe it's Lane that goes for a takedown. Now, I'm not saying that Lane is freaking Bo Nickel with his wrestling, but
ding, ding, ding.
Who knows with Diniz? Maybe he'll look that way. But I haven't seen Lane really wrestle, so I assume he stands with Diniz. I'm gonna say Diniz keeps his streak going. I say Diniz wins by first round TKO.
Third from the top at UFC on ESPN 55 is a women's flyweight clash between Ariane Lipski and Karine Silva, 2 women who will bring the momentum of matching 3-fight octagon win streaks and put them up on the chopping block. Lipski, the 30-year-old Brazilian, is 17-8 overall. She's 6-5 since joining the UFC as the outgoing KSW flyweight champ. She famously experienced mixed results in her early going, but seems to have righted the ship. And as I mentioned, she's on a 3-fight win streak dating back almost exactly a year. Those coming over JJ Aldrich, Melissa Gatto, and most recently, Casey O'Neill, whom she faced at UFC 296 back in December and armbarred in the first round. Sorry, in the second round. She'll look to make it 4 in a row and kind of elbow her way to the front of the increasingly crowded queue of title contenders against Silva. Silva, 30-year-old Brazilian, is 17-4 overall. She's a perfect 3-0 since joining the UFC out of season 5 of Dana White's Contender Series. She fought most recently last August at UFC 292, choking out Marina Moroz with a first-round buzzer-beating guillotine choke. Moroz tapped, just like photo finish with the horn going off, looked very distraught at having tapped out rather than gutted it out. But regardless of how we got there, it goes down as another first round finish for Silva, who now has three first round finishes and 3 attempts in the octagon. She would love to make it 4 in a row, I'm sure, but she would also settle for just getting her 4th win in a row. She is favored to do so. She's minus 155, Lipski plus 125 as your underdog. Keith, I'm going to flip this one to you first, but we've been previewing UFC events since Lipski was one of the more disappointing free agent signings in recent UFC history. She's turned that around, and now she's looking to kind of make the next step from here. She's still just 30 years old. In fact, these women are basically the same age. Who you got in this one? And do you see either of these women challenging for a flyweight title before they're done in the UFC?
Yeah, so that's two tough questions. So Lipski, I mean, it's funny because she was like viewed as this absolute bust, and now she's got one of the quietest win streaks in the UFC. I'm not, I don't want this to come off sexist. You don't have to have a long winning streak in women's division to be a contender, because
it's just a shallower division. I'd say the same thing about men's heavyweight.
Exactly. Yeah. It's yeah. I mean, all the women's divisions, because generally speaking, there's more men doing MMA than females. So it's obviously there's, you know, if it's gymnastics, I'm sure it's easier to make the men's gymnastics team than it is to make the females. Do I see them getting a flyweight title shot? That's tough because, you know, you have the Ultimate Fighter show getting taped with the two top women in the division, and Alexa Grasso and Valentina Shevchenko. So that kind of puts it on hold. You have Manon Farrow, who's waiting, who's ahead of them in the line. You have Macy Barber, who's ahead of them in the line. So, we do that, like, who you call on the list. Yeah, probably the winner of this is fourth on the list, maybe.
It is fourth and is a good 3 to 5 years older than the women who are ahead of her in line.
So it's not out of the, I would like to say, like, realm of possibility. It's not out of the realm out of possibility, but it's not likely either. But it's not not only get a title shot, it's not out of the realm of possibility they win the title, which would have been laughable. Like, if you went back 2 years ago and you said Ariane Lipski's going to win a title, I go, oh, well, she went back to KSW, or she's fighting some regional show, or freaking bare knuckle boxing. I don't know, something. It is a pretty cool career turnaround. I mean, and it's not like she's just winning fights. She's looking really good. Her volume is good. She's got fast hands, a lot of variety in her striking, landing all areas of the body, really good kicking game. Kicks low, kick high, mixing the kicks and the punches in together well. I am still concerned the amount of damage she took in her run in the UFC. I mean, she had a lot of moments. What I love is her clinch game. She gets in the clinch. She's throwing knees and elbows in there. She's starting to show some offensive wrestling. She took down JJ Aldridge, which was not a good person to, strike with. So she went to and she actually was doing well striking, since she went to the wrestling advantage. Melissa Gatto, she took down. She used to be a terrible defensive wrestler, but she showed improvements against JJ Aldridge, against Casey O'Neill. She's stopping takedowns. She has 4 subs on her record. She just subbed Casey O'Neill. But I love that she caught it in a scramble. She's going against a real tough test on Karine Silva. Silva's a well-rounded fighter. On the feet, she's a really good kickboxer, quick hands. She throws tight combinations. She throws straight shots down the pipe. She has a very good kicking game. I love her teep kicks, a good high kick. She's a solid wrestler, decent defensive wrestler. She chains takedowns together well. She gets inside and she will look for bylock takedowns. In her overall ground grappling game, it's slick. She got some quick back takes. She got 9 subs already in his career. She can get subs off her back. She almost had a Gogo Plata on the Contender Series. The concern is if when she is on her back, she might play BJ a little too much and struggle to get back to the feet. I think this is a card. This should be the co-main event. You could even make an argument this could be the main event, especially because the main event's a weaker main event. These 2 females are probably closer to a title shot than. You asked me, who's a close one. They might be closer than no, not Nicolau if he wins, because flyweights. Sorry, that's flyweight. But they should at least be above the Span fight. I gave up on Lipski, but now I kind of believe in her. That said, I think Silva is a bad stylistic matchup for her. They're both good strikers, but Silva is more explosive and hits way harder. But more importantly, I think she's a way better grappler. I still am going to give her the grappling advantage there. I think she takes Lipski down. I think she finds a sub. I say she does in the second round.
Yeah, I agree with the 2 kind of main thrusts of your breakdown there. That one, Lipski is on a good run and she's looking better than we had any right to expect. But 2, having said that, Silva is a tough next test for her. We've talked about this pretty much every time she's fought since we've been doing these shows. But for her coming out of KSW, my hope was, My hope was that she was going to become the poor woman's Valentina Shevchenko, because a lot of the parallels were there. She's a Muay Thai striker, and not just like, yeah, I'm a kickboxer. I mean, she would come out with like in KSL, but she come out with like the little headband, the Mongkol, like the, you know, that stiff cord Muay Thai headband, and, you know, like we'll do the little dance, kind of like a lot of Muay Thai strikers will do. But then that sort of belied the fact that her ground game was very underrated. And then she came to the UFC and it all seemed to fall flat. Like the aggression, the athleticism, the power, they all seemed to abandon her for whatever reason. I've speculated on that. She, in the last year and a half, the last year really, I mean, she's a year and a half removed from getting knocked out by Priscilla Cachoeira. So, okay, in the last year or so, she seems to have come to some sort of, like she's made peace with whatever her physical gifts and her skill set are. And she's starting to look really good, like you mentioned. Aldrich and Gatto are two good fighters, and she handled them. It'll remain to be seen whether Casey O'Neill just continues to go down the tubes from here, or Lipski's win over her age as well. But okay, even at her best now, I no longer think Lipski is even a poor woman's Valentina Shevchenko. Like, Lipski's a very good striker. She throws good volume. She's a good offensive grappler, but what she doesn't have that Shevchenko's always had is Shevchenko's a good offensive wrestler and a good defensive wrestler, and Lipski really isn't. If this stays on the feet, I can definitely see Lipski chipping away, winning a decision over Silva. She may not have quite the power, but I think she's a more refined striker, probably a little more sound defensively. But this is probably going to go to the ground. And Silva is a better wrestler, at least as good a grappler. And if they end up on the ground in situations where it's Silva initiating the takedown and she's on top working from guard, that's a position and a situation that definitely favors her over Lipski. I see this fight being one where Silva wins a pretty straightforward decision because they are on the ground a lot and because it is Silva working from top position, just chipping away with short strikes, maybe like threatening to pass Lipski's guard, and Lipski's just stuck on the bottom, either making ill-advised attempts to strike or mount offense from there, or just stuck down there. So give me Silva in a decision here. And if she goes 4-0 in this division, she's definitely going to be a woman of interest. That brings us to the co-main event of UFC on ESPN 55, a light heavyweight matchup between Ryan Spann and Bogdan Guskov. Spann, the 32-year-old Texan, is 21-9 overall. He is 7-4 since joining the UFC as a two-time veteran of Dana White's Contender Series. He fought on season 1, got knocked out in seconds by Carl Roberson, came back for season 2, beat Emiliano Sordi, and since then he's been in the UFC, where, as I mentioned, he's 7-4. He is on the first losing streak of his UFC career. He fought twice last year, getting tapped out in the first round by Nikita Krylov in March, then coming back in August and dropping a split decision in a rematch against Anthony Smith. So he'll be looking to snap that losing streak. He will need to get past Guskov to do it. Guskov, 31-year-old, is 15-3 overall. He's 1-1 since joining the UFC last fall. He debuted in September, got choked out by Volkan Oezdemir in the first round, came back in February at UFC Fight Night Hermansson versus Pfeiffer and knocked out Zach Pauga in the first round. Odds here favor Spann. He is -205, Guskov +170. Ryan Spann should win this fight. Spann is a guy who has made it into Sherdog's light heavyweight top 10, absolutely has top 10 upside in terms of his skills, his physical attributes, his skill set. But it is tough for me to love him as a 2-1 favorite against almost anybody in the division, just because he is so vulnerable. Like, like mistake prone, I guess, is part of it. A little bad luck here and there. Like he's got 4 losses in the UFC. His loss to Johnny Walker, it's hard to fault him for that because he was trying to take Walker down. Walker landed about 15 illegal elbows to the back of his head, fight over. But I mean, he's lost to Anthony Smith twice now, once just really getting taken advantage of on the ground, and once just in kind of a weird gun-shy performance and a guy he should have outgunned badly on the feet. And then another one where he just blundered right into a triangle against Nikita Krylov. He is a guy that is physically bigger and stronger than almost all of his opponents, more athletic than almost all of his opponents, has a very good offensive skill set, and nonetheless has found a way to lose about a third of his fights in the UFC. Like, he should dust Bogdan Guskov. Like, Guskov is still, to me, it looks mostly like a big, strong guy that punches really hard. Like, he will kick, he will knee, but like his punches are his go-to weapon. I think I said this ahead of his debut that it was ironic that he was fighting Volkan Oezdemir because he seemed kind of like just a poor man's Volkan Oezdemir to me. Like, there's like Ryan Spann should be able to head kick this guy or knee him to death from the clinch, or hell, catch something in transition and like Bravo choke him. But as a 2-1 favorite, there's also every chance that he just blunders into a haymaker that forms almost Guskov's only real plausible route to victory. Like, I know, Spann and Guskov know, Saif Saud definitely knows how this probably looks if Guskov wins. And I'm still not completely sure that Spann doesn't just walk right into a haymaker. I'm taking Spann in this one. And if I'm taking him, I think he gets the finish. Give me Spann by second. I'm going to say second round sub, that he just finds like a guillotine in the middle of some exchange on the fence. But I expect to be biting my nails the whole time. And I'm not even betting on the thing. If I were betting, I don't think I'd be able to sit down. Just Spann, too inconsistent, just, too error prone. But I think he has enough to get past Guskov here.
I don't get why this fight is this high on the card. I mean, how long do you have to give Ryan Spann big fights? That I'm not saying, I shouldn't say this is a big fight, but I mean a big spot on the card.
Sure.
I mean, like I said, I think Lipski and Silva should be over this. I'm sure there's 1 or 2 other fights that you could probably argue over this. Off my soapbox now. Spann. Yeah, he's huge for weight class. I mean, the guy could easily move up to heavyweight and compete there. And actually, it'd be a good move for him, being that his run at light heavyweight has not been the best. He's long and lengthy. He's a patient striker. He's fairly technical. Not the highest output, but he has big power. I mean, I always go back. I mean, it's a long time ago, but he dropped Dominic Reyes with a jab. So he's got that whipping left hand. He's also very good at beating his opponent to the point of contact. He has that Alice to Overeem thing. We talked about him before, where everyone thinks he's a striker, but he actually might be better on the ground. He's got 11 submissions on his record. He's got a great guillotine, one of the best there is. He subbed Ian Cutelaba with it. He caught Sam Alvey with a standing triangle choke. The problem is he's a great offensive grappler. His defensive grappling is very suspect. I mean, he was subbed by Anthony Smith. He got subbed by Nikita Krylov. Guskov, he isn't a technical striker, but he throws hard, straight shots. He's got big power. He's got 13 TKOs. One thing I like about him is he's very unorthodox. He'll throw the same side attack. He'll throw like 2 crosses in a row, which is just, it'll work because people aren't expecting it. Now, later on, people will change that and make adjustments, but early on, you're not expecting it. He's got the offensive power to put you out, but he has a lot of defense issues. He hangs his hands low. He keeps his chin high. He doesn't move his head. I mean, Volkan Oezdemir hurt him bad. And on top of that, he's a weak defensive wrestler. I mean, terrible. I mean, in fairness, his last fight, he was stopping some takedowns, so that's good. I've seen him on the regional scene. If he's on top, he has vicious ground and pound because he's a big guy. But if he's on bottom, I mean, he struggles to get off the bottom. His submission defense is an issue. I legit don't know if Spann is good. I mean, he wins good matches, then he loses to a shot Anthony Smith. There's a good chance that Guskov just catches him on the feet and puts his lights out. But that really hasn't been the avenue of victory over Spann. Spann should have a huge edge in the grappling. I think Spann just gets the fight to the ground. He locks in submission early. Give me Spann my first round sub.
With that, we come to the main event of UFC on ESPN 55, a men's flyweight matchup between Matheus Nicolau and Alex Perez. Nicolau, the 31-year-old Brazilian, is 19-3-1 overall. He is 9-2 in the UFC. He did lose his last time out. He faced Brandon Royval in a title eliminator almost exactly a year ago at UFC on ESPN, Holloway versus Allen, and got knocked out in the first round. Prior to that, he had been on a 6-fight win streak that, well, saw him make it all the way to a title eliminator. He'll look to climb back up that last rung. He had been scheduled to rematch Manel Kopp, which obviously was a big sounding matchup, promised an exciting fight, and would have been a serious factor in the title discussion. Kopp was forced to withdraw the first day or two of April. So in steps Perez on about 4 weeks notice. Perez, 32-year-old Californian, 24-8 overall, 6-4 since joining the UFC out of season 1 of Dana White's Contender Series. And he is a guy that's made it all the way to a title eliminator as well, but he is currently mired in a 3-fight losing streak, stretching back at this point over 3 years. You have to go all the way back to November of 2020 for his first round loss to Davison Figueiredo. He then had a lengthy injury layoff, came back in summer of 2022, got tapped out by Alexandre Pantoja in the first round, came back again after another 18-month layoff in March, and dropped a unanimous decision to Muhammad Mokaev. That was at UFC Fight Night Rosenstrike versus Gaziev just about 6 weeks ago. So he comes back in on fairly short turnaround, looking to turn around that losing streak. Unsurprisingly, he's not favored to get it done, but speaking only for myself, the line's tighter than I expected it to be. Nicolau is minus 185, Perez plus 150 on the comeback. Part of me wants to write off Alex Perez. He's just 32, but he's fought for a long time. I mean, he's one of those guys that he's practically, I mean, he should have his picture over the, and for all I know, I've never been there. He might as well have his picture over the entrance to like the Tachi, tribal hotel and casino, because he, even more than like Poppies Martinez, the Tachi Kid, is basically, he's basically the face of that promotion. Like what Sakuraba was to Pride, what, Rumina Sato was to Shudo, Alex Perez is to Tachi Palace Fights. He had so many fights under his belt.
Was to Bellator.
Yes. And even at 32, he's had visible trouble with the weight cut since he's been in the UFC. He's had a couple of lengthy injury layoffs. And men's flyweight, one of the things that makes it awesome, I mean, there are a lot of things that make it awesome. All the fighters are very athletic. Almost all of them have great cardio. Almost all of them are extremely well-rounded. The thing that makes men's flyweight cool is that even the best fighters tend to be super aggro. But Perez just hasn't seemed to have the durability to make that work against the best of the best in that division. Like he's got 4 losses in the UFC and 3 of them are first-round finishes. And they're all to either champs or Joseph Benavidez, who was the number 2 guy in the division forever. But that was Perez's natural kind of scrapper instinct, writing checks that it turned out his chin and body couldn't cash. He was a little more measured in the fight with Mokaev, and I thought he looked okay. But Mokaev, we have no indication that he's even going to become a Matheus Nicolau. I expect that this will be a really fun, competitive fight until something gives out on Perez. Like, if they are just going wild in the first round, I expect that Perez is the one that's going to catch something on the chin that leaves him on skates. If this goes past the first round, I think Perez is probably the one that's going to get tired first. And that's made even worse by the fact that he's turning around on fairly short notice. I don't know what his weight cut is, but it's clearly substantial. He's a big guy, and he has an aggro fight style that burns like a lot of energy. So yeah, just ways for Perez to win this all involve him catching Nicolau with something freaky or Nicolau making a big mistake. And I just don't see that happening. Like, Nicolau got starched by Dustin Ortiz in what, in hindsight, was a weird outcome. But I don't even think that's the same Matheus Nicolau that we have on our hands anymore. I'm surprised the line is as tight as it is. I wouldn't have been shocked if Nicolau came into this as like a minus 300 favorite. I think he probably should be. I'm not a betting man, but if I were, I'd certainly make this part of my parlay and just sweeten it up a little bit. Give me Nicolau here, and I'm going to say he finishes it in the second round. Like, maybe we have a wild, fun first round. He hurts Perez in the second, and it's all over pretty quickly from there. Nicolau by second round TKO.
Yeah, if someone like blitzes right through a guy, it's definitely Nicolau. Like, Perez, if he wins, I mean, yeah, you're right. I guess he could land a big haymaker or catch a sub. I'm saying that he's more likely having a victory is wrestling and getting takedowns, and it's tough to have a lot of confidence in Perez. Besides being on a losing streak, it's just being so inactive, and it's good that he's getting more active now, you returning, but I mean, the guy, look at over his fight record, and the guy's, and not all of them are his fault, but he has had, in the last like 4 years, he's had like 12 fights or something like that canceled. I mean, dude, the guy,
he has no wins over anybody who's still in the UFC. Yeah,
that's not good. And yeah, again, some of those are injuries, and some of them are not his fault. Like when I'm looking at like Kai France got injured, that's not his fault. But
yeah,
I mean, this guy got a fight canceled because his wife wouldn't pack his luggage for him. I mean, like, this guy got everything happen to him. But so one thing that we don't talk about is, like, he's a big flyweight. Remember, he used to have struggles making weight and like fighting, and then having a quick turnaround, and then he had like a fight canceled, and then that, all these things. Like, is he going to make weight? But he's a wrestle boxer. He's got good output on the feet. He's a pressure striker. He marches down his foe with his high guard. He wants to be the one pressing the action. He hates being pressured. I go back to like the Pantoja fight. He just couldn't handle the pressure from Pantoja. It was one of those fights where, like, similar to what I said about Uros Medish, where who was the guy that Alan Cruz that. He was beating him before he even knew the fight started. The same thing happened in the Pantoja Perez fight. Like, it was over before Perez was even ready. He throws tight combinations. His straight right is his best blow. He's very accurate. Again, I'm going off of like a 4-year window, guessing, because we haven't seen him that much. He works the body well. Good calf kicks. He's a good wrestler. He's good entries, good top control, solid ground and pound. Though his submission defense is a big issue. I mean, he was subbed by Figueiredo, he was subbed by Pantoja, back-to-back fights. Nicolau, he's a good athlete. Good footwork, cuts angles really well, good movement, and setting his opponents to chase him to kind of draw out their power shots and then countering him. He loves the kind of like the cat and mouse game. He also like lulls opponents to sleep from far away. Then he darts in and lands a big shot. He was doing that well to Manel Cop. He's got quick hands. He's explosive. He's got short, tight combinations. His best strike is probably his left hook or his straight left. His right hook. I'm sorry. His right hook or his straight left. He throws hard hooks. some of the best power in the division for a guy that when you don't look at him as like a power puncher because he's like a little lengthier guy, not like a shorter, stocky guy. He throws hard leg kicks. He's an underrated wrestler, and he's a good grappler. Mean ground and pound. He's got 5 subs. The concern to him is durability. He just was knocked out by Brandon Rival, so you have to worry about his chin entering this fight. Perez's management team gives this guy no breaks. I mean, I'll say this: he's been out for 4 fights, but 4 years. Excuse me. Look at the guys he has fought. He's on a 3-fight losing streak, but that's a Deiveson Figueiredo when Deiveson Figueiredo was a champion, which has not aged bad at all. Alejandro Pantoja, which has aged even better.
Yep.
Muhammad Mokaev, who has championship potential, and now he's fighting Matthias Nicolau. It's like, good Lord, management team. I don't know. You can't tell this guy like a Malcolm Gordon or something. What? Oh, that guy hasn't won in 4 years. Oh, there's an open for a main event against this absolute killer. Let's throw him in there. I really want to pick Perez. He looked good against Mokaev. He started off a little slow, but as the fight went on, he got more competitive. You know what? I'm switching my pick on the fly. I think he drops the early rounds. I say he pressures. I think he gets the takedowns. I think he gets an inner Tachi Palace fight power getting him. He summons the Tachi Palace fight gods, secures some late rounds, lets all you people forget. You must have forgot. I'll give me Perez by split decision.
All right, that was unexpected. I cannot wait to see how that pans out.
It wasn't expected on my side. I just threw it. I'm switching my pick. I had that pick the whole time.
And
it surprised these young kids.
Hey, and this old man. That is it. The Sherdog Radio Network preview for UFC on ESPN 55, Nicolau versus Perez. I have been Ben. He has been Keith. If this is your first time watching or listening to one of our previews, first of all, thank you. This is one of the shorter ones we've ever done, but normally we try to give you as good a blend of in-depth analysis, bold picks, and occasional humorous asides as you'll find anywhere in this industry. Please do subscribe, drop us a comment. We were very touched by the response that our UFC 200 preview got, and then the eyeballs that the UFC 300 recap got. Please do drop us a comment. Keith and I both man the comment section. We'd love to hear from you on these. In definitely at least 200 shows that we've done together, this is the first time I've ever gone straight chalk. This is the first time I've ever not picked a single underdog. Normally I pick at least as many underdogs as Keith does. I did not pick any tonight. So
you got to prove it now. You got to lay. You got to do that parlay. We said you got to give Liang and who was the other one?
Liang, Yahya, and Mann.
Yeah, you got to throw $100 on that parlay. Be a man of the people, Ben.
And if I win, I don't know. I'll retire because that would be a fat.
I'll be doing the show anymore.
Yeah,
it'll be the Shilling preview show.
Yeah, I'll see what I can do. But if you think I missed out on any interesting underdog value, let us know in the comments. If you're right, you will definitely get all the credit on the recap. Obviously, join us for the recap. We are live on the Sherdog YouTube page right after the main event. Keith takes the captain's chair. We'll talk about all 12 of these fights in reverse order from the headliner all the way down to the first prelim. We will talk about what was good, what was bad, what was surprising, what was controversial. There's always something. We will talk about what's next for some of the notable winners as well as losers. We will have a cut list about as long as my arm, and we will talk with you. The live chat is open that whole time, so we are taking your questions, your comments, and your hot takes in real time. We have a growing community of friends that hang out with us after the fights, and we would love for you to be part of it. Between now and then, thank you once again for listening. Enjoy the rest of your week. even if you are in protective custody like Keith in an anonymous hotel somewhere in King of Prussia. And by all means, enjoy these fights.
To the sea. Make your bed of fairy tales while you're hunting for your whale. So